Some of you might be asking, Scott, why 12 books and not the traditional 10? That's because all these books feel like my children, and excluding even one of them from the list feels unnecessarily cruel. So instead, I'm ranking them in order of the ones I love the least to the ones I love the most. And I'm also excluding one book, because that's how I roll. Rereads, I just don't feel like they belong in a best reads list. So Jude the Obscure, even though it's one of my favourite books, misses this list entirely. But don't worry, Jude's already pretty miserable. He's used to the disappointment. At 12 is All That's Left Unsaid. This is a story of a Vietnamese Australian woman whose younger brother has just graduated high school and he wants to go out to a local restaurant and celebrate with his friends and family. The parents think that it will be unsafe and they want him to stay home. But she pressures her parents into letting her brother have the night out and celebrate his hard work. At the busy restaurant, he is murdered and nobody saw what happened. Set in the 1990s in the Sydney suburb of Cabramatta, Tracey Lien explores the anti-Asian feelings in society at the time, the anti-police feelings within the Vietnamese community, the judgment of Vietnamese community by the police, the 4T's crime gang, which is a real crime gang made up of Vietnamese Australians. She also explores poverty, the judgment of some Vietnamese on other Vietnamese who do not have the same means, the importance of education, the cultural differences between white Australians and Vietnamese Australians. And this is a fantastic way of exploring the diversity of the Vietnamese community, exploring how they're different to one another and the various different views and personalities within a community. It also explores the effect of racism on the people within the community. We see the story tie into the real-life rise of Pauline Hanson's right-wing nationalist party, One Nation, and Australia's only political assassination. This is often sold as a bit of a crime mystery sort of novel, and I guess it is, but if that's what you're looking for, you'll be disappointed. And if you don't read crime novels, but you do enjoy really strong character-focused novels that focus on things like inequality and racism, this is a fantastic one for you. At number 11 is Your Driver Is Waiting by Priya, a fantastic little novel about Damini, a young Sri Lankan Canadian lesbian who is driving for some sort of taxi replacement app. She's poor. She is fighting off eviction from the house she shares with her mother, who herself is suffering from depression after the death of her husband. The app seems to be paying Damini less and less, forcing her to work longer and longer hours so she can still not have enough money to cover all of her basic needs. And it really does get that aspect about poverty so spot on. One day, Damini picks up Jolene and ends up dating her, except that she's never dated anybody well off before, and never a white girl with money. This novel is about the exploitation of the working class, about why are all these people who are working these apps, why are they always brown? It's also about allyship and understanding money and privilege, a dark comedy with a social commentary. It's super messy, and it's also getting some real hate out there by some reviewers, so you know it's done something right when it's upset that many people. Number 10 is Enter Ghost by Isabella Hammad. Sonia, a recently divorced Pakistani woman living in London as an actress, returns to Israel to visit her sister and rediscover her roots. This is where she meets Memoriam, a director putting on a performance of Hamlet in Arabic, and Sonia agrees to play Gertrude, Hamlet's mother. I think this is a wonderful combination. We have a story about a woman rediscovering herself and moving on and healing from her divorce. Then there is this story of Palestine, or rather the Palestinian people. I really like that phrase, with war it doesn't matter who wins, the people always lose. And I don't think that anybody would say that Palestine has done particularly well out of the conflict in the Middle East. Now the people are in the situation where they're putting on a play in their own language and it is seen as an act of political defiance. It's very effective at making you understand the realities of the daily lives of Palestinian people living in Israel. I also think it's a cool look at Sonia's failed marriage, and to look at Israel and Palestine and view it as a failed marriage, and to look at how things in Sonia's marriage are symbolic of Israel and Palestine and vice versa. Then there is also Hamlet, and that represents both things in the marriage and things in the relationship between Israel and Palestine. It's really symbolic and really clever. It's the sort of book where you're not going to get everything that Isabella Hammad is doing, because she's doing quite a lot and it's really rich. Not understanding everything doesn't take away from the simple enjoyment of reading this, which makes it ultimately rereadable. A book about three things: a woman, a country, and a play. At number 9, Burnham Wood by Eleanor Catton. Essentially, this is a book about a guerrilla gardening group who receive funding from a billionaire. Catton then turns this into a bit of an eco-thriller, and I've seen a few people say that this is very slow to begin with, but I think that's where Catton is doing a lot of her thematic work. That's where we have these philosophical and political questions that feed in and interact with each other. At one point we are talking about mining rare minerals, and this can really be seen as the philosophical trolley problem. Do you change the track that the trolley is on? Can you murder 1 to save 5? Catton is then blending this question with the political. Should somebody be profiting off running these trolleys? And are we being sold the trolley issue just so somebody can profit? Or is there really a justification that harm has to be done to reduce greater harm? Catton is showing us the idealistic nature of the left, and she is further questioning how deviations from those ideals for personal gains within the system that exists creates conflict and disunity. There is a lack of willingness from those people who are on the most idealistic side of things to listen to people who are struggling and need to break with the ideals just to live. It points out how life alienates the left into little tiny groups. I found this part of the novel that people are calling boring to be really juicy and full of brain food and ideas. For me personally, this was the perfect way to build a world before the plot starts to unwind and we have this high octane finish. Brilliant ending, and just such clever thematic work from Eleanor Catton in this book. At number 8 is At Certain Points We Touch by Lauren John Joseph. It is February 29th, the birthday of Thomas James, our narrator's JJ's first big love. This date is the catalyst for JJ to reflect on their less than perfect relationship approximately 10 years ago. Set in London, Liverpool, New York, and San Francisco, this book is both a character portrait of a toxic man and a coming-of-age story for JJ, somebody who is figuring out their gender identity. I love the exploration of misogyny within the gay community. It's something that authors will often shy away from because historically there is a gay stereotype that gay people are evil. So then there is this push back against this stereotype. And as a result, we often see gay people represented as victims and saints, when the reality is that there are a lot of gay people out there and they represent good and bad and all sorts of people. They're all human and they all have the issues that they need to work on. And there are misogynist gays who don't like femme gays or trans women. And this really plays into JJ's gender exploitation. Are they a femme gay man or are they a trans woman? Are they something in between those two things? Whatever they are, they're a valid human with hopes and dreams and fears and desires, which are expressed on the page wonderfully, but their identity will be judged by the man that they're in a relationship with. This is such a good, meaty conversation and something that I haven't seen explored in other novels I've read. JJ and Thomas James are both artists. JJ is a writer and a performer. Thomas James is a photographer. And when you have this conversation about art in a novel, it can also become very meta. JJ, the protagonist, is a writer. Our author is Lauren John Joseph. Is the book that JJ's writing, is it At Certain Points We Touch? It just adds another layer to this already big conversation. Moving on from one coming-of-age novel straight on to another coming-of-age novel, and we have Marmee by Jessica George. A young British Ghanese woman living in London has been caring for her father for years, and she wants to experience life. As a result of caring, she has become quite a late bloomer. So in some ways this feels like it could be a bit of a young adult book, because what Maddie or Marmee is doing are the same things that a lot of 16 to 19 year olds might be doing, but she's 25. But I think it's really great to have late bloomers in a novel, because it doesn't mean that they're less emotionally mature. It's just that we're all different people and we don't have to experience things at 16 to 19 because that's what some people are doing. Some people move out of home when they're 14. Some people move out of home when they're 30. Everybody is different and there shouldn't be a stigma attached to it. But there is, and that's really stupid, and I like seeing books break down stupid stigmas and stereotypes. This book also explores a lot of the standard things a messy girl novel explores. Dating, dead-end careers, financial insecurity, sexism, because our protagonist is black, racism as well, and there is familial expectations included in this book. What I love about this book is that Jessica George has not just painted a bleak picture, but she's shown you the bad and she's shown you the good and the in-between as well, all next to each other. I just simply love that. I feel like it represents so many people, but it also provides hope for so many people as well. If we pick dating as an example, it's not so much saying that all men are shit, that dating is shit. It's saying that dating is hard, that men can be shit, but it's also showing you how men should treat women, how men should make women feel. It's just a nice comparison to have. I love that this book also explores some things that are often considered taboo. Conversations around periods are becoming increasingly normal-place. I also think the conversation around women's sexual pleasure has often focused on women having a sex drive and women wanting to experience orgasms and have a joyful sex life. It doesn't often focus on the difficulties women can have in feeling pleasure in the first place. What makes this book good is that it is so very easy to get behind Maddie, to want what she wants, to support her. She was just very easy to like and very easy to invest in. And when a book can make you care about the protagonist early on, then unless the author stuffs things up, it's always going to be a great reading experience. And Jessica George has done the exact opposite of stuffing things up from there. Magma. This is a brutal and very sad book about Lilia, a 20-year-old woman who is in love with a man who is emotionally abusive. Lilia wants nothing more than to please her man in the hopes that he will love her as she loves him. If she lets him sleep with other women, will he love her more? What about if she stops him from sleeping with them? Will he still love her? This is a book about a horrible relationship, about control and gaslighting, about a slow microdosing of abuse resulting in a boiling of the frog situation, the undercurrent of violence in sexual acts, the expectation men have for women, and the effect that has on the women. It's about mental health and self-harm and what it means to care for somebody in all the guises that could be. And it is beautifully written, a poetic novella. It's probably the most starkly feminist novel that I have read this year. Brutal, emotional, and unflinchingly raw. Wade in the Water, Naomi Nkrumah. I haven't seen anybody else discuss this one on BookTube, so please, if you're a fellow BookTuber, pick this one up, read it, and make some noise. Ella is 11. She's super intelligent for her age, and she's made a new friend, Miss St. James. The issue is that they're living in the racially divided city of Ricksville in Mississippi, and Miss St. James has moved into the black side of town, and this creates tension within the black community. Ella is young and naive and thinks well of people. She doesn't have an inbuilt distrust of white people that many people in her community has, and she wants nothing more than the black people she likes within the community to like her new white best friend, her new tutor. Miss St. James isn't what she seems. She has a past with black people. And while this novel is set in 1982, it flashes back to the 1960s when Miss St. James was a teenager, and we learn the details of that past. A really great piece of literary fiction discussing racism in a really complex way. It's not simply showing you the mistreatment of people and letting you see it and letting you come to the conclusion that racism is wrong. Sure, it is doing doing that, but it's also looking at the distrust and the integration and how would black people and white people live together considering the histories and the attitudes that are already present and that are created as a result of racism, often historical racism. This feels like what Harper Lee might have written if she was black and writing after the 1980s instead of before it. It's just so good. One of the best pieces of Southern literature out there. Chain Gang AllStars. If you haven't read this one yet, do it. It will be the best dystopian novel you read this year. Prisoners can opt into a special prison program where they fight death matches, which are then televised for the profit of people running the prison. Win enough fights and they can go free. If Roman gladiators were inspired by the current profit for prisons system that exists. The television spectacle this creates feels somewhere between the hype our society gets for a major sporting event, crossed with the voyeurism we feel for reality TV stars, the Big Brother house at the Olympics with blood sports. There are so many examples of how the prison system currently works included in this world. For example, the conversation about food, what prisoners eat and how that works is just one such example, not getting the nourishment that they need. There are all these little nuggets of cruelty that we have within the prison system put in this world. Most of the time we are following these two women who are close to winning their freedom and they're lovers. But we also follow two other prisoners, a man who has lost his arm in a factory accident and a man who is mentally disabled in some undiagnosed way, but has somehow found his way into prison and agreed to fight death matches. All these characters are people of colour, and all these interactions represent the prejudices that we see within the prison industry towards various different people, not just people of colour, but people with mental and physical disabilities, queer people. This is a very, very critical book of the failings of the current prison system within the US. But that system, there are a lot of similarities between the US prison system and the Australian prison system and the European and the UK, so on and so forth. The way that this brutality is packed together so that the viewers find it palatable is so well done and so thought-provoking. And for me, this is the best part of this novel, to see how easy it is to get people to accept this. This is a book with a really great plot that you could just rip through quickly, or it's a book that you can read really slowly and annotate every sentence and take note of all the little clever things the author has done. I'm a fan. Sheena Patel. My favourite read from the Women's Prize this year. This one has really divided readers too. Some people love it and some people are just incorrect. But it's okay. We love people no matter what books they love, unless they love Jack Kerouac's On the Road. That book is disgracefully bad. I'm a Fan is a book about obsession. It's about the internet. It's about curating appearances and the realities behind those appearances. It's about performative activism, capitalist drive, monetary privilege, racism, sexism, power, and control. And it's juicy and messy and toxic and complex. This is the literary equivalent of eating tacos while drunk at a Michelin star food truck and having juice from that taco slop down your arm and pondering if you're in a safe enough place to lick the inside of your elbow because you can't bear to have any piece of that flavour go missing from your mouth. Our protagonist is a brown girl who really only cares about two people. The woman she is obsessed with and the man she wants to be with. The woman she's obsessed with is a semi-famous white influencer who is in a relationship with the man she wants to be with, who sometimes also has sex with our protagonist, and who also seems to have a string of other women at the ready to sleep with as well. A socially critical mess that doesn't pull its punches. And the thing that really pushes this book to the next level is that our protagonist is not some lost creature who is being eaten by the world. She's very self-aware of what's going on, and she wants to be the wolf that's doing the eating. I think that this is one of the most important and will be one of the most influential novels published in the last 12 months. Millennial fiction just grew up. And number 2, it's In Memoriam by Alice Winn. The story of two boys who are in love with each other but they don't tell one another they're going to boarding school together, and then they enroll in the army to fight in World War One. It is the execution that elevates this novel. I love the comparison between the structure of a posh boarding school and the structure of the British Army. But also, this boarding school acts in so many other brilliant ways. It acts to show us that these boys are wealthy and privileged, and how that wealth and privilege changes their army experience. The boarding school also acts to show us their age. I mean, who goes from high school to fighting a world war? There's also the all-boys environment of the public school and the all-man environment of the army, and how that is reflected upon each other. There is the dehumanizing way that new children are treated at the school, and that is comparable to the way men are sent to their death in the war. It's such an effective way to demonstrate the cheapness of life and the callousness and the brutality and the mindlessness of those in control. And it really points out that what happened in the war was an inevitable outcome of the society at the time, and that it would probably happen again. I think Winn also captures the way that war changes her characters wonderfully. These boys who gaily loved freely become incapable of loving or of accepting love. It's dark, and the humour in it is so cruel. In terms of just general writing skill and execution, I think this is the best novel published that I have read since A Fine Balance was published in 1995. And number one, When Things Are Alive, They Hum, Hannah Bent. Two sisters, one with Down syndrome, one who promises her now dead mother that she would always look after her sister. The sister with Down syndrome needs a heart transplant but can't find her way onto a waiting list. Organ donors are rare in Hong Kong, and doctors don't want to give their limited supply to somebody with Down syndrome. The two sisters' father has found a new partner and she wants to help, but both sisters think that she's overstepping. The family used to be quite rich, but money is starting to run out. In China, they might be able to get a donor, but how reliable is it? And also, how ethical is it? The sister with Down syndrome doesn't want a new heart. She loves her father, her sister, her boyfriend, and she's such a happy and loving character, always thinking well of people, even when they are cruel. And she doesn't want a new heart because that's what you love with. This is a book where bodily autonomy meets who has the right to live, meets a really horrible political situation, meets a pretty standard domestic novel in all honesty, and it just creates this wonderful layered discussion. It's emotional and it taught me stuff. I invested in all of the characters and all of their goals and desires. Even when their desires worked in opposite directions to one another, I often found myself on both sides of the argument. This is a book with everything I want in it, and I was just there from beginning to end. Just a great read. That's my top 12 books of the year so far. If this video gets 150 likes, I'll make a video telling you about the other 16 books I have given 5 stars to this year. So smash that like button or gently caress it if you're not a very violent person. Happy reading. Bye bye.